I never, we never really talked about this whole thing about how, I came to play you in a movie. It was funny, and fun, and just the whole thing kind of was almost surreal. I grew up, with football, and, probably like you did, and all my brothers, my cousins, my friends, we all played. It was like it was largely part of a large part of our identity, our friends group. And I remember, when I was a young man, the Kurt Warner days, but it was like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a long time ago to me. And I remember him coming out of the Arena League. The Arena League was new, and how unprecedented that all was. And I remember it just was different. There was something different about it. His style of play was like a different rhythm to it, a different pace almost. And I remember Coach Mike Martz, the architect of this greatest show on turf and all that, and eventual champion of Super Bowl 34. Right? 34, right?
Hmm.
But then I'm hired to play Coach Mike Martz some 2 decades later. And while my recollection was strong, my sense of how to do it, to be Mike Martz, when I really started thinking of it, I said, well, man, I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. And I was just sort of at a loss when I really sat down and said, well, how are you going to do it? I'm like, I have no idea. So I just want to thank you officially for answering my call when I reached out through the producers, who were great guys, by the way. John and Andy Irwin and Mark Chardy were super, super guys, and they think the world of you. Um, but without your guidance, without your advice and your friendship, I don't think I could have pulled it off authentically.
Well, you did a
Uh,
great job. I really appreciate you doing it. It was fun to watch. You did a great job. I wish it was an accurate depiction of what happened because it's not.
yeah.
It's completely bogus. Those conversations that they had in there, the love story is a great love story. It really is. But I don't know who came up with those that dialogue, or I mean, that's just I would never do that stuff. I would never, and the last one, the one that got me was they're in the meeting room at the end of the spring before everybody breaks for the summer. In reality, and all the coaches in there can vouch for this. The last thing Dick said before we broke out is he said, "Hey, now we got to make sure, Mike, are you sound? Are you firm with Curtis being the backup because all of our jobs may rely on?" I said, "Absolutely." And that was it. That's exactly what happened. This thing, me arguing against him, that never happened. I was the only one in that whole place that was fighting for him, which is kind of. I mean, I never say anything about it, but it does make me feel bad because I fought my ass off for him because they wanted him out of there. They wanted to hire Hostetler. Mike White's a good friend of the head coach, Dick Vermeil, and Dick left it up to me. To his credit, he was really, really good to work for, and he just, he was tired of being involved. He was wore out, and he liked what we were doing. He had great confidence, all of us on offense, and he just let it go. So we, my quarterback coach and I, there's no question about how we felt about Kurt, but that wasn't the depiction. I never had an office one-on-one with Kurt. Everything was always cordial, and Kurt didn't speak very much. He was a little intimidated by things. And I think at some point, Kurt thought he had arrived. He just felt like he could just go do it without the things that we were telling him originally. And then I think it began to sink in that, you know, he had to learn what we we're doing on an intimate level. And then he started to do that. But I will tell you how I knew how good he was. The very first play for him in practice for me, it was in the spring, and it was in minicamp. And that night before, we had a meeting where we put the passes in with the quarterbacks, and I'm going through the reads with Trent Green, and the play was 748 up drag. And I said, "Now look, our safeties are going to hang in the middle. Just take a peek on your way back. If that safety's not getting out of there, you can go ahead and throw the deep eight, but it's probably not going to happen. But just be aware so he doesn't get involved in the dig. But we're going to work the dig down to the drag." Got it? Got it. Well, Kurt's sitting over here, and he's taking notes furiously, and so as luck would have it, his first play in practice for us in that system was that play. He drops back, and I'm looking at the dig and the drag. Yeah, he's got either one. I see the ball go over the top for a touchdown to the deep post. And I walked over to Kurt and I said, what made you throw that? He said, well, in our meetings, you said that the safety hangs there a little bit. We can take a shot. So I did. I knew then he was unique. He got it right away. I mean, for a guy to be able to come out and hear just that little bit and be able to go and actually do it and see it and respond to it in game time speed. Yeah. And I turned around, I looked at our quarterback coach, John Ramsdale, and I said, yeah, we might have a pretty good one here, you know. So just that first play was real indicative of what he was capable of doing.
You know, it's hard to make a movie about a real event, right?
Yeah.
You have to compromise it in so many different ways. And I know, you know, I don't think the film was made, you know, against your.
No, it wasn't, and it wasn't about my
character or
relationship with
anything.
Kurt. It's a great love story. I got all that.
Right.
That's why I've never said anything about it. But I was offended by it because it just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the opposite, and it was just a short combination, but it offended me a little bit. And I think I told you that before, but I mean, you get over that stuff. But the reality of it was he was an unusual talent, but an unusual person. He had a toughness to him, Chance, that you just don't see in people.
Mm.
When I looked at him, we were going to cut him and get rid of him, I think in March. Dick said, we got to make a decision on this kid. Take a look at him. I said, well, what tape is there of him? He said, well, he's just played in the World League. I said, all right. So I went in there. Charlie Armour got me some tape, our GM. And I'm looking through these tapes and I watch him in games. So, oh my gosh. I mean, they don't block anybody over there. I mean, he's getting hammered and he's throwing the ball and just throwing darts for touchdowns. And I thought, hey, this has got to be the toughest kid I've ever seen. And I came out and I said, well, I know this. He at least should get the chance to be our number two, because what I've seen on tape, he's a pretty tough guy and he's accurate and all those other things. So we did. But there's a whole bunch of guys in the building without going into it that did not want him, didn't think he was good enough, and they wanted Jeff Hostetler. How could this kid be good enough, right? So we fought that, and Dick fought it. To his credit, Dick fought it and stood up for us at the end. And you know, they put him out. They put him out on waivers there during the summer without us knowing it, and nobody took him. It was an expansion waiver.
What was it that you saw? Was it the toughness specifically that
his intensity, what he could see and respond to, like that play,
mm-hmm.
with all that information, to see it, boom, and do it in just the blink of an eye. Oh yeah, and then throw it.
He had great vision, didn't he?
Well, it's just more than that. His processing. He didn't have to think about anything. We just gave him that read. He already had it. He came back. He didn't come back and say, okay, now if the safety goes down, and then, you know, he just came back, boom. He just knew what to look at. And he was such a quick study in everything. It was remarkable. That's why we did so much, because he could do it. Yeah. I mean, I've never been around anybody like that. I mean, we stretched it to the max with him. We gave him way more than I probably should have, because he could do it. And it put so much pressure on defenses, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, I'm sorry that the film was not more, of course I had nothing to do with it, but I'm sorry that the film wasn't more in line with the true, your truth, you know, the truth that of the real story. But I admire your character for taking it that way. And I think ultimately you come off well in the film. I think it's sort of like the end justifies the means. In addition to your help, I think I told you I watched The Officer and a Gentleman right before shooting started,
you did.
And it really helped me.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you, I coached him differently than any quarterback I've ever coached, because he had this, why are you saying all this to me? Why are you working on me like this? You know, kind of attitude. He thought he could just go out and from the very beginning. And I also knew what happened to him at Green Bay. Yeah. So I'm already out there on him, wanting to make him my number two in the spring. So I told Dick, I said, we just got to find out about if he's A, good enough, and B, if he's tough enough. Because if his knees buckled in a huddle in Green Bay, my gosh, you know, what's going to happen here? So I was relentless with him, and he just couldn't figure out why all the little details I'm telling him, and that's not right. You know, your fifth step is too big there, all that stuff. Well, you didn't say it to Trent Green, well, because he's doing it right, that kind of thing, So, but after we get done looking at the film, and he'd walk out, his head would be down because it just absolutely burned him up, and Trent would just sit there chuckling, because Trent's been through that. But Trent was a sponge where initially, anyway, Kurt kind of fought it, and that's why I had to really kind of break him down a little bit. And I was really, really, really hard on him in the spring.
Well, they got that part right in the movie,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Give me the ball. Give me the ball. What are you thinking? How do you drop that?
That ain't on the QB, coach.
That man is risking his life for you every snap.
Yeah, good. You love football, man. Like you really love it through and through.
I do. It's a passion. Chance that I'm writing a book. I've been asked to write a book for years. I thought, well, we'll do that. Just not because of any success I've had, just because my journey's been a little different than most people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not been an easy one, and just maybe if somebody can take something out of it, it'd be good. But since I was a kid, my dad was a top turret gunner on those bombers over Berlin.
Mm.
And he flew 42 missions. He came back a wreck, and 5 boys, and he's an alcoholic. They split up, but when he came back, he coached high school football for a year or two in the Indian reservation there in South Dakota, and he loved football. And I guess I must have just somehow, I don't know, but ever since I was 6 or 7 years old, I was a water boy during a fall camp over at Sioux Falls University, just down the street from our house. Carrying the helmets out to practice and all that. I couldn't get enough of it.
You played college football. You played at a couple schools, I believe.
I did.
You played at
Yeah, Chance, when I was in high school, my sophomore year, I was probably weighed 125 pounds. Couldn't. My pads were all too big for me because I was so scrawny. And my sophomore year, I was 150 pounds. I started the first game, took a pitch for about 9 yards against San Diego High School. Next game, I fumbled and I didn't start again. On the dive play, I lost the ball. It was completely my fault. But that was an 0-9 team, so I couldn't start on an 0-9 team. But that's how good I was, So then my senior year, my little brother was junior. We're the 2 starting inside backers, and first day of pads in practice, we're having the last play of practice, goal line stand. I went up and I hit the running back and knocked his helmet off, knocked the ball out. Everybody's having a pep rally, but I severely injured these 2 discs in 5 and 6, C5 and C6, so that ended up having surgery there. But so I missed my high school year. So I didn't have a high school career, but I wanted to play college football. I'm going out to PE in the spring, and one of the first year coach there said, "Mike, what are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go pound nails or something, And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to be a football coach. I've always wanted to be a football coach. I want to play college football." He said, "Well, you can do that." I said, "Come on, look at me." So he set me up over at Mesa Junior College. And junior college in California, for people who don't know, is really big football. I mean, in those days, in the 60s, especially in the 70s, it was very, very, very big. And there's a lot of talent. All colleges drew from the JCs, So I went over there, worked out, and ended up, becoming a starter, and was all conference, all American, all that stuff. Had a lot of records, and a dream came true finally, but it took 4 years to get there to even become a starter, Then I went on to Fresno State and finished up at Fresno State.
as a tight end.
As a tight end, yeah.
And you were that small in high school, and then you
I was a running back and a linebacker in high school, and when I went to a junior college, I was trying to be a linebacker, an outside linebacker, and they had 1 million of them. So they just said, "Well, you go play tight end, you can catch the ball." And I was, at the time, I think I was 6'1", 100 and maybe 190 pounds, 185 pounds. But by the next year, I was 6'2", 220, 215, and that was the year that got me. It's just, all the stars lined up perfect for me then. And it had just didn't get injured, had a lot of balls thrown to me, had a lot of success, and we were a good team. So
you finished your college, and then was there any looks on pros, or what was the story?
the Giants wanted to bring me to camp, and I had hurt my neck again. I hurt my lower back, and I knocked my shoulder down, and I was just done. Physically, I was just beat up. I just couldn't, and I knew ultimately I was way too small. I could have gotten at my 6'2". I could have probably gotten to 240 or 235, but You know, I had to really, really push it. And I just ultimately didn't feel like I belonged in that league. I could play in that league. So I was anxious to get into coaching, you know.
And that's one of the factors so many people just don't know if they haven't played on any level or if they've played a little bit. There's so many factors that go into it. It's not you clearly had the desire. We
Yeah.
don't always have the physical carriage. We don't always
Right.
have the vehicle to get it done. You know, it just and it's not a matter of choice. It's not a matter of working hard. It's reality.
Well, you know, in those days too, guys were taking steroids
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't checked yet. I mean, I could have done that, but I understood too, because that's just something I didn't want to get involved with. So maybe if I did that, I could have gone and lasted a little bit, but I ate like a horse and worked out. See, in those days, schools didn't have weight rooms. Some of them did. So, but I went and worked out religiously every morning and kept my weight up to 215 or so, 220. But if I stopped eating, I go down to 185, you know,
Right.
which is what happened when I stopped playing.
And then it just becomes unnatural weight. You're loading it on, but it's
Yeah.
unnatural. Your body's
Yeah.
not
I mean,
making
your
it
joints, you know, it's more weight than you should be carrying. Of course, you know, I was eating protein and working out like crazy with weights and getting big and all that sort of thing. But I got tired of doing that. You know, I just did, you know.
Yeah. The important thing is the spirit of football is inside you, and it was then,
Yeah.
it is now. I
Yeah.
mean that's clear. When I talk to you about football today, you're a retired coach, but man, your head is in football. Like
Yeah, it always will be. I can't go to a high school. In fact, I got to tell you a story. We had a cabin up in Idaho, in McCall, Idaho, and my youngest son and I were deer hunting, and we came down the mountain and I saw high school lights, and so we went bought a ticket, went to the high school game. I couldn't drive by a high school game without seeing it. I wanted to go watch it. It was great. We sat there and watched the game, and then went home.
I do the same thing. In fact, I told you I kind of soured on the NFL a couple, really pretty much right after your time, and I get so much out of watching college and high school that I don't have a whole lot of energy left for the NFL anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I don't begrudge the guys. I give it up to them. They're phenomenal athletes. I'm glad they're making a lot of money, but I don't care to watch it as much. You know?
Some of it's hard to watch. I think so much of it is what we call video football.
Right.
I watch the offensive line play and just the quality. I mean, you can go back and look at tapes from the NFL in the 80s and the 90s and then look at it now and just look at the technique. Look at the corners covering receiver. You'll never see corners reaching out and grabbing guys and holding on. That never happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's because they don't know how to cover guys because they've never been taught and they don't think they can cover them. The first thing you do, whenever I had a corner in practice, and I had one that used to do it all the time, I said, "What's the matter? You're not good enough that you can't cover this guy with your feet. You got to reach out and grab him." "No, coach, no." I said, "Well, use your feet to cover him then." You know, those are the kinds of things that drive me nuts when I watch it. And I watch offensive line play, and in particular, because I got my start in the league coaching offensive line for a little while. So, you know, watching the corner play is horrendous for the most part. These guys are gifted guys, but they're not taught how to play the position very well.
You saw a lot of it last night too, and these are some of the best in
absolutely.
the country, right?
Well, but the kid from Ohio State, the corner, give me a break. Just wrapping guys up because he can't cover them with his feet, and if he's doing it, then he's doing it every day in practice, and they allow it. That's just wrong.
I know. I'm asking myself. I'm like, did D-backs used to cover guys like this,
No.
where they're like hugging them?
No,
Like,
no,
what is
you
this?
couldn't. You could. There's a lot of push like this, but there was nobody wrapping guys up. That was always. And now the league has gotten more lenient about it. And now I just heard a comment that was right out of when I was on the competition committee. Mike Pereira was charged with officials, and we got into a big brouhaha with them, all of us on the committee, about what pass interference for defensive holding is down the field. And we showed them a bunch of examples. They said, "Well, in my opinion, he didn't hold him up enough there for it to be a penalty." I said, wait, whoa, stop. That's not what the rule says. You You can't sit there and judge it and try to know whether that how much, because if that ball's thrown before he comes out of the cut, and then you're going to sit there and tell me now he didn't hold him up enough, you don't know.
Enough. It wasn't enough.
But that's not what the rule says anyway. The rule says you can't grab him, period. You cannot grab him after 5 yards. You can't do that. And so we made our point with him. There are a lot of guys that had been through that as well, and it got cleaned up for a while, and now it's gone back to that. And I heard one of the officials say those exact words. Well, in my opinion, you didn't hold him up enough. That's just not the rule, unless they've changed the rule.
It's the evolution of things, and it's the way things go because they're not doing, they do it too much. It's becoming commonplace.
Well, I tell you what happens, Chance, being on that committee, we would question all the head coaches in the league, would send in at season end what they'd like to see change. And every head coach had a pet peeve about something that happened to him in a game. They wanted that changed. And that's what happens. You get a defensive head coach saying, well, there are too many restrictions or whatever. Then they get enough of that, and it has an effect on the committee. And then you start looking at that. And, I think every year in the committee that I was on the committee, I think it was 4 years, every year we came out of there changing something. And it drove me nuts. The game's fine the way it is. Why do you want, like, the kickoff? Is that the most worthless thing you've seen in your life, is the NFL kickoff?
If the personal seat licenses weren't enough to make somebody like me leave the NFL for good, which I did, then that kickoff alone is enough to do. I watched it because I don't watch I watched a game, and I said, you got to be kidding me. And I'm asking the people I'm watching it with, I'm like, how can you watch this game and take it seriously when they kick off like that? It's disgraceful.
It is disgraceful.
It's goofy looking. It looks like a video game. It's like, what are we doing?
And you're not going to get run backs like you used to occasionally. And, and it's all about protecting guys and injuries and all that sort of thing. But guess what? It's a violent game. It's a game of collisions. They're going to happen. You know that going in, so suck it up.
I'm with you on that. Now, so college football is suddenly a pro sport.
It is, yeah.
How did that happen?
So it's all about power. The NCAA has its power is diminished dramatically. They're almost toothless now because they have no effect on. The SC coaches are very powerful because they have a lot of TV contracts, a lot of TV money, and the recruiting changed. All those recruiting things charged, where you start recruiting kids as sophomores and all that dumb stuff. Now they got to recruit year round. All that stuff started changing, trying to get an edge in recruiting and catch up with somebody else. Now, when Gavin Newsom passed that law, they challenged the NCAA on that, money for athletes. That changed everything. And now when that opened, it was a can of worms.
Now, what happened? Take me back through that because I'm not that familiar.
They sued the NCAA on behalf of Newsom was involved in it. I don't know what the lawsuit said, but he won. They won it. They came out.
The state of California sued the NCAA.
Yeah. It said, "Hey, this is wrong. You ought to be able to pay student athletes. They shouldn't just be, held to just their scholarships."
That's where this originated.
That's where it all started. Yeah, that's where it all started.
To be able to have moments like this, where we got the governor of California signing a bill to allow athletes in college.
Let's do it, man.
That's where it all started.
Wow. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's what tripped it off. Now it's okay to pay college athletes.
Yeah.
Look,
antitrust laws or something like that, where they filed a claim with the courts and they ruled in the athlete's behalf.
Okay. I don't have a major problem with these incredible athletes getting compensated.
Absolutely not.
Right. But it's not being done the right way.
Well, they know that too, though, Chance.
Yeah.
They know that. I mean, the schools involved now, they know that this thing is just out of control.
It's out of control.
And they're trying to grab it and pull it back because the richer will continue to get rich in this system. The team, like, here's an example. Oregon, 250, was it I think they've got 20 million in NIL money. UCLA, I think, has 200,000. That was told to me. Those inequities are crazy.
How about the inequities of and look, I'm the last one to want I'm not a socialist. I'm the furthest thing from it.
Right.
I
Right.
believe in capitalism, but how about the inequities of there's one guy or five guys on the team getting $1 million a year, right? On a college football team. And then you were a tight end, you know the lineman mentality. The linemen are getting little or nothing.
Right.
How does that build a team
It doesn't.
ethos?
Take a look at Arizona State. They went from an awful team to being in the playoffs by 60 new players, and you know they didn't get money. They came there. They just brought in a bunch of new kids that hadn't played. They just wanted a chance to play. They come in there and they rewire it. Now what's going to happen with those kids? They're going to have to pay them something, or they're going to jump someplace else, and it's created such a dilemma. The whole football team could change in any one year.
So that's another major issue is this transfer portal.
In my opinion, Jance, I think they ought to be given a chance to transfer one time.
That's what I think. But
But
only
there's
if they're
guys
not
in
a
there
starter.
three times.
But only if
transfer.
they're not a starter,
Yeah, right.
right? And once, the concept of anybody can go anytime. Do you think this is why Nick Saban left?
Yes, it is. It's such a rat's nest. He was tired dealing with it. See, when you sign on as educators, that's why I was raised as you do this. If you can help somebody, a group or a team become something they didn't think they could become, that's the reward for you. That's what you're trying to help these kids grow up to be men, and he believes in that. And this is anything but that.
And I want to point out that last night those messages came through in spite of all the negatives that we're talking about that's going on in college football. I did not see a lack of work ethic. I did not see a lack of that football spirit last night. It was phenomenal. I think both teams showed up to win.
They did.
Notre Dame fought their way back, and they damn near came back and won that game. So, even with all this stuff going on, the spirit of football and those important elements of it are still strong, especially I think Ryan Day's story coming out of it was a brutal season for him, even though it was a successful season. After Michigan, they were calling for his head,
Yeah, they wanted to lop his head off, yeah. That's the thing about football, though, Chance, when you look at when you played and whatnot, when you go on the field, and a guy told me my first game in the NFL as a coach, Ted Tollner, our quarterback coach, told me this. He said, "This is your first game, Mike." I said, "Yeah, you excited?" I said, "Yeah, I'm excited." He said, "Just remember this. The minute you walk through that door and get out on the field, it doesn't make any difference what anybody makes or who they are. It's all about competing and winning. Nobody cares about the rest of the stuff until you walk off the stadium and get into your car and go home, And he put it so well, I thought, because it's true. When you walk in the building during the week, none of that matters until they walk back out and get into their car and go home,
How much of that remains in football today?
Well, I think it does. I think obviously we always talked about the locker room. The locker room being you had a strong character in the locker room with your leadership. So you don't have all this bitching and these complaining and he's making this and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. That just kind of takes care of it. When you have a divided locker room because of those things and other things, then it does affect it. But you cannot let that affect them. And that's coaching, that's leadership from the head coach, but it's also the kind of people that you brought onto that team. Mm-hmm.
I got to believe that NIL is creating havoc.
It is. And I think from what I understand, they want to put a cap on it. Mm-hmm. I think they want to cap how much any particular player can make at any time, which would make sense.
I also think, and again, I don't want to come across as a socialist, but I think they should share some of that money. Not all of it. I don't mind weighting it, weighted towards the person who's bringing most of it in, but they should all get some of it. If they're, Coach, if you put Jeremiah Smith out there on the field by himself, how many games is he going to win? 0, right? You got to have 11 guys on that field to win a game.
Well, I think they're headed towards that. I think they're headed towards, the NFL. The reason the NFL works is that they have revenue sharing. Cincinnati and St. Louis, when the Rams were there, the TV market was very poor.
Yeah.
So everybody gets the same chip, the 32 teams every week. They get the same chip. And then they have other little things that they do, obviously, but that keeps the league afloat and strong. And they're all working under the same amount of money, the cap-wise, each team is. So that gives it a level playing field. When you do this, when you give exorbitant amounts of money to certain guys in college, it just tips the playing field one direction.
Okay. See, great minds think alike, Coach. So, because that's really the success of the modern day NFL was when those guys, the Rooneys and the Maras, all those great NFL families banded together and they said, look, we're not going to penalize a small market for being a small market. We're going to pool the money. And that's where that's when they really started going into the stratosphere with these big, you look at like Lawrence Taylor, that era, those guys weren't making millions and millions of dollars. They were making still in the, not all of them, but they were making in the hundreds of thousands. Well, they were your players and some of them were into the millions. Now the money they're making is staggering.
Yeah.
And, good for them. But okay, so that's the NFL. Why doesn't the NCAA take a lesson from the NFL?
I think they are. From what I understand, from just word of mouth, just from people that I know, they're trying to get together. To get the NCAA to agree on anything is very difficult because there's so many, they come from so many backgrounds, and the presidents, most of them don't have any kind of athletic background. So they don't really, like SC's president, she has no idea. Why does SC jump into that league where they're going to play games on the East Coast, play Rutgers? That makes no sense. Why would you do that? When you had the Pac-10 or the Pac-12 out there, you save money with that. There's tradition and all that sort. It's all about money. It's all about money.
Could the Giants, let's say the Giants want to be in the NFC West tomorrow. Can they do that? No.
No, the league has to vote that in.
Right, because there's a structure.
There's a structure. You're right.
So where is that? Why?
The NCAA.
What's going on?
The NCAA is just kind of a fake front. Just is.
They just seem very confused and very like they haven't grown up yet or something.
When they passed these laws, or when they inserted this stuff, they did it without looking forward and looking at the ramifications of it. They weren't proactive with any of this stuff, the cause and effect. They just knew at that point that's what they wanted to do, and it's been a disaster. I
think those three things, the portal, the NIL, and this fluid conference system is you got to nail that stuff down. And it's not that complicated, in my opinion. You put, for instance, 10 geographically restricted conferences with approximately 10 teams in each conference. You're going to have parity in about 3 to 5 years. Like,
you don't want parity. Yeah, but the SEC does not want parity. So here's what
SEC doesn't. I know, but
no. So here's what they want. They want 50 schools. Really, they prefer having like 40 or 30. But they want 50 schools, and then it's all going to come out of that. The rest of you guys, you go play.
I'd be okay with 50 in the true 1A. What I call 1A now. They call it FCS
Division
or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think in the top 1A, 50 is fine. So have 5 conferences, 10 teams in each, or whatever you want to do. But don't let the teams play wherever they want. You can't. It's bizarre. Yeah. It's crazy. It's insane.
I think it'll be reorganized again. I would rather see them have more Division I than 50. I'd rather have them see more like 75, because there's some teams like BYU that won't make that list, top 50. A team like San Diego State would never have a chance to make that. Washington State wouldn't. Those kinds of teams should have, because they're building. You just keep pushing them down.
Well, I watched the FCS. What the hell is it? The 1AA championship was phenomenal. Those guys, they're killing it. Yeah, hell, I watched the Division III championships.
I do too.
They're fun to watch.
They are.
why not bolster those levels, and why not make it sort of like the European soccer leagues where you have the ability to go up. You perform well in, say, 3 years, a 3-year block. If you're the top 2 or 3 teams, you're going to go up, and the crappy teams in 1A, they're coming down. If
Well, that's what's going to
Rice or
happen. It's
whatever.
funny you said that. It's funny you said that because that's what will happen. So if they go to 50 teams, and it's kind of that way now, because you'll look at, like, Michigan just picked up a quarterback from Fresno State. He's got 1 year left.
They gave one of those quarterbacks a little bit of money, as I recall.
They just picked him up, and they signed a freshman that's supposed to be really good. But
I think that's the guy that got the money.
so now you got this kid that's started 3 years for Fresno State. He goes to University of Michigan. Now, what's Fresno State do? They're counting on him to be there as a senior. Now, yeah, he's a 50. He's in the top 50. Blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But it rapes those other schools of talent, because if you let them start doing that, very seldom are those guys coming back.
Well, look, you got Conference USA, right? You got the Sun Belt. You got the MAC. It's great football.
It is
But
good football.
They're not going to be in the, even if we go to 16
Right.
teams, they'll never
Right.
make it. Never.
Right.
So what's the point? They're not 1A, but they are, but
Well,
they're not.
Well, at one time they were 1A, and then it was Division 1A, and then 2A is how it used to be. So they were a 1A team. I played at Fresno State. We were a 1A team, and we played, San Diego State, San Jose was our, we played other teams of high caliber, but we weren't Tennessee and Ohio State and those teams. Obviously.
But that's part of the problem is they're on the same level, but they're absolutely not. And
But I think, Chance, you're right. You're right about this, because there's only 50 schools that have the money to operate at that level.
Mm-hmm.
They can offer kids that kind of money, NIL money, and do all those things and attract them. And the rest of them are going to take like Fresno State, they don't have any money. They have no money.
So that should be cultivated. So we section out the 50. Let's say we do 5 conferences, right, with 10 teams, and you have to have this much in your endowment for the sports, but you got to compete. And they do a reevaluation every 3 to 4 years or whatever. And if you're at the bottom 3,
That's a
you're
good
going
idea.
down FCS, and the top
Somebody comes up. I like
Montana
it.
State, North Dakota
I like
State,
it.
you're coming up.
I like
That
it,
would
yeah.
keep like constant competition going.
That'd be good. That's a good idea. I like that idea.
All
Yeah.
right. We're going to put that to the committee, you and me. All right, Coach. Well, look, man, this business of mine has led me to some interesting places and some opportunities. It's afforded me some real eye-opening opportunities and things that have become pretty edifying. And it was a great honor to have the opportunity to play you on film. And the fact that we don't hate each other in the aftermath is all the results I need.
Well, you did a great job. You were better than me. I can tell you that.
That's it.
If I played you, you'd be upset. I can tell you
That's
that.
it. I'm sending you a check. I got that's it. That settles it. Well, anyway, thank you. And I really appreciate you sharing your time and your spirit and your insight here to talk about your career. You're a legend. You're a legend. Whether you're in the game or out of the game, you're in the game right now. And by the way, Belichick's going down to coach college. You don't rule it out. All right.
I've been offered a number of college jobs, and I can't. I've ignored my family, my wife, for 40 years.
Yeah, I understand.
And we're in a spot now that with the grandkids and the kids kind of enjoying life. And I've had so many physical issues at one point that it'd just be too hard on my body to go back. I want to go back.
I understand.
Every day I think about coaching again, but I know it's just not for me.
But I know you do. You continue to consult on various levels.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
That's probably a better function to be doing.
Yeah, I'm enjoying that part.
You probably get a call from Belichick soon.
It's kind of like having grandkids. You have fun with them. Say, go ahead. They're yours.
You
I
can,
put a
you
whole
can
bill.
back. All right. Well, it's the architect of the greatest show on turf. He's my friend. He's Coach Mike Martz. He's a legend, ladies and gentlemen. Coach, thank you so much for your time, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Chance.
Okay. Great seeing you.